Good evening, everybody. My name is Tiana Lamine. I'm the president of the Caribbean Student Association on campus. On behalf of CSA, I would like to thank you for coming to the annual Bob Marley Bash that we host every year. Every year we host this event basically to pay homage to the legendary Bob Marley. He was born originally Robert Nesta Marley, February 6, 1945 in St. Anne, Jamaica. He was born to a white Caucasian quartermaster named Captain Norville Marley and Sadella Booker. His father left not long after he was born, but he still attempted to financially help them out, even though that didn't really work out that well. Eventually, him and his mother moved to Trenchtown, Jamaica. At the age of 16, he then started following his musical journey into music. Throughout his life, he basically tried to create peace through his music and kind of soothe the soul, pretty much. Also throughout his life, he gave birth to 11 children, as I was informed the other day. I thought it was 9, but it's actually 11. And one girl, yeah. At the age of 36, he died in Miami, Florida on May 11, 1981. May 21st, he was buried back in his hometown of Jamaica. And since then, his music still lives on through all of his children, throughout us. I didn't really give a long speech because we have a speaker already, Aaron Aska. So I'm gonna stop talking. Aaron Aska.
First, I want to thank Tiana for inviting me to speak on such short notice. She emailed me, it was last week Friday, and asked me if I could speak at this event. And I just want to give, for people who don't know me, a little background. Actually, I attended Rutgers University, and I was also the president of the West Indian Association, so having events like this was very common back in the early 90s, not to give away my age, but when I was the president then, people wanted to brand the West Indian Association as a party club, but we wanted to change that image and essentially show people that the West Indian or Caribbean Association is much deeper than just parties. It's an organization that has a deep, rich tradition, and just the fact that people from the islands represent multiple and different ethnicities and racial background, it was just kind of a wonderful place to be back in the 90s, and I know it's a wonderful place to be here. So, as I said, I want to thank Tiana for inviting me to speak on such short notice, but I'm not going to speak about Bob Marley per se, but I'm going to speak about a story, and this story is going to be about, I don't know, for the show of hands, who've heard of the name James Meredith? Okay, for those who know James Meredith, you have to be older than 30. I only see one hand up. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is about James Meredith, the story and life of James Meredith, and how his life is somewhat connected to some of Bob Marley's themes and some of Bob Marley's songs. So it should be about, it's about a 15-minute speech, so I hope you all enjoy it. First of all, thank you for inviting me to speak at your Bob Marley Bash, and I'm truly honored to speak at this special event. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Aaron Aska, and I'm the Vice President of Administration and Finance at New Jersey City University. It is not often that I have the opportunity to speak publicly on topics unrelated to budgets, finance, parking, or construction. But I want you to know that in my former life, I was a Caribbean and history teacher in Jamaica several years ago. Although I was initially asked to speak about the life and legacy of Robert Nesta Marley, I would like to borrow a phrase from one of Bob Marley's songs, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery," which to me means enlightening and liberating one's minds from conventional and oppressive thinking. Nonetheless, my topic today is not exclusively about Bob Marley or slavery per se, but is about the battle of old myths which is the short name for the University of Mississippi, during the Jim Crow and Civil Rights era, which to many African Americans was not much different from slavery as far as being denied basic civil rights. Also, as we celebrate Black History Month, it's important to recognize the historical context of higher education and to appreciate the option and freedom we have today to attend a college or university of our choice, provided we meet the academic requirements that are race blind. However, it was only 50 years ago that several African Americans were denied the choice and freedom we have today when several public institutions refused to admit blacks. However, here we are today at a public institution which looks decidedly different a few decades ago, but in 2008 was renowned as the fourth most diverse institution in the nation, according to the U.S. News and World Report. My speech today is about the battle to overcome tremendous obstacles which most of us face. It's a story of Ole Miss and the battle to desegregate higher education in Mississippi. The Battle of Ole Miss in many ways reminds me of the fight for independence in Jamaica and the Caribbean as a whole. While the Caribbean islands during the 1960s fought for political independence, the fight in many southern states was about civil rights. Mississippi in the 1950s was the last bastion of a segregated education. Although African Americans were approximately 47% of the state's population, many did not enjoy the same civil rights of some of its northern and southern neighbors. However, a young African American named James Meredith was determined to change the course of history. During this era, most successful professionals graduated from Ole Miss. So it was not surprising that James Meredith, who was a teenager, had aspirations of becoming a successful lawyer and governor, and recognized that the path to success was through Ole Miss. But at the time, Ole Miss was an all-white university, and the administration of the university and the governor of the state intended to preserve the status quo. Ole Miss during the 1950s was the embodiment of the state itself. The Confederate flag draped over most student dorm windows, and the university's football team was known as the Rebels. A throwback to the Civil War period when the southern states staunchly supported states' rights to continue the institution of slavery. Yet it was hard to imagine why any African American would want to attend an institution that represents the most virulent elements of the past. James Meredith's father, like most parents, imbued his children with a sense of pride and strong work ethic. He forbade his children to work in the homes of Southern whites, to care for their children, and to do their laundry. This sense of ambition was one of the influential factors that would shape James Meredith's desire to attend Ole Miss. In 1961, when James was only 29, he applied to Ole Miss, recognizing that he had amassed enough credits from Jackson State University, which was an all-black university, and had acquired significant military experience in the U.S. Air Force, where he was stationed in Japan during the Korean War. Meredith was not the first African American to apply to Ole Miss, and in 1948, Medgar Evers, the famed civil rights activist, also applied to Ole Miss, and his application was summarily rejected. Clennon King and Clyde Kennan were also African Americans that applied to Ole Miss, and both their applications were rejected for various inexplicable reasons. King was accused of being emotionally and mentally unstable, while Kennard was accused of petty theft, which was an automatic reason for disqualification. Although Meredith was well aware of his fellow African Americans' unsuccessful attempt to gain access to Ole Miss, he was undeterred and was well aware that to successfully enroll in Ole Miss, timing was everything. So the question becomes, why would Meredith believe his chances were any greater than previous African Americans who were denied admissions at Ole Miss? Now, Meredith was well aware that his success for matriculating in Ole Miss was largely dependent on the assistance of the White House and the president. For example, Harry Truman desegregated the military in 1947, and President Eisenhower sent federal troops to Little Rock, Arkansas to uphold the federal mandate of Brown versus Board of Education, which was the legislation that desegregated education in the United States. Although segregation was prohibited by the federal government, each state was allowed to implement their own desegregation policies at a pace that was considered reasonable. While some southern states reluctantly implemented some form of desegregation, Mississippi was slow to comply with the federal mandates of Brown versus the Board of Education.